section, and we'll go from there.
Okay.
Hero Sports is a website that I was impressed with. Some Tennessee sites were impressed, or maybe not, with the idea that the Tennessee Volunteers, or Knoxville, I should say, was the 26th best college town in America, according to Wai Sallas, at 26. I said, even myself, who really thinks there are far too many homers in Tennessee covering the Vols, said, that seems a little low, especially when it's behind Boise at 23. Gotta start here. Wai Sallas, Hero Sports, a pleasure to make your acquaintance. Want to begin by asking you 100 top college towns. First of all, what's the criteria here? I mean, would you include, say, Los Angeles or, for that matter, Philadelphia? These are big cities. We think of them as pro towns, but they have viable Division I FBA college town in your definition, Wai Sallas of Hero Sports.
So, first of all, thanks a lot, Mark, for having me. My definition, and it's solely my definition of a college football town, is basically any town that houses a college football team. So it can be Los Angeles, it can be Philadelphia, some of these big metropolitans. As we get further down the ranking, there'll be some of those. But it also can be some smaller towns like Boone, North Carolina.
Okay.
Or, places like that where the college is basically the town. So it runs the gamut of any place that houses a college football team.
Okay, so let me ask you, I mean, when you're out there in the West, now Wai is from Hawaii originally, and I'll go in and ask you this. I mean, first of all, what island on Hawaii? Was it, are you from Honolulu, or where are you from?
Yes, I'm from the island of Oahu, in the city of Honolulu, home of the University of Hawaii Warriors, which was the team I grew up following.
Sure.
So that I guess objectivity or subjectivity comes from.
No, and that's fine, okay? I mean, I used to, in a previous era at this radio station, wear a University of Hawaii Rainbow Warriors, and yes, it was still the Rainbow Warriors cap, and the general manager of the time could not fathom that, at the time. It was sort of that insular East Tennessee type of thing. But no, once upon a time, I would do that here on the air, Wai Sallas. And I want to ask you here, now that's a place right there, Hawaii. And I know about 10 years ago, I felt that Hawaii should win more. And the reason why is even though their recruiting budget is small, I've always felt that you could send a postcard, let's say, to any recruit in the country asking, would you like to play at the University of Hawaii? And more times than not, the postcard was going to come back, yes, I would. It's the University of Hawaii, for crying out loud. And so I want to ask then, Honolulu as a college town, what's it like?
Honolulu as a college football town, or a college town in general, is not what you would expect. When the team is good, they're one of the most ardent fans you will find. The problem is, when they're not good, they're some of the more fair weather fans. And I liken it to somewhere like Los Angeles or Miami, where there's so much other things going on that it's so easy to kind of let your mind wander into other interests while you're there, which is kind of disappointing because, especially with the coaching staff there now, a lot of the traffic's terrible to get there. There's a lot of things to hold people back from going to watch Hawaii play. It was one of the most delightful places to be on a Saturday night.
Now, I always used to look forward to that last college football game of the year at Hawaii that usually was broadcast on ESPN. You'd bring in somebody, and rarely did Hawaii win that game. But, you bring in them to play Michigan or somebody like that as sort of a treat for recruiting. Hey, we're going to play in Hawaii. And more times than not, the then Rainbow Warriors would give them everything they could. But I think what we want to know here is that, look, you're ranking the top 100 college football towns in America. Okay, but how do you compare? You just said, things to do right there. How do you put and pit together then a Los Angeles against a Boone, North Carolina, which also isn't far from the Tri-Cities, actually closer than Knoxville? How do you objectively do that?
So truly there is the program by itself, the city by itself, and then some good and bad things that go along with that specific college football town. So I kind of came out, I went through the 130 FBS teams and kind of narrowed that down to 100. So basically just eliminated 30 towns that I didn't really feel met the criteria or made that. And then I kind of just went through those. And then, I started with, growing up in Hawaii, you kind of mythologized a lot of these big college football towns. So obviously they were the first ones that I named. And then you kind of go down the list and you look at the better college football programs. And then you kind of look separately at some of the best college towns by themselves without football. And then you kind of just sort them out as you seem fit. So that's kind of how I was able to kind of sort out 100. And that's why you'll see some of, some major FBS programs, or some people would view as major FBS programs, being near the bottom of the list. And other cities like Boise, Idaho, are near the top.
Okay, but this is where I want to go with Los Angeles, too. Just at the top of my head, I mean, well, it's got to be 129. Place that has two major college football programs within their city limits that you could knock out of the mix as well. But
there's Georgia State and Georgia Tech. Which
okay.
There's FIU in Miami, which is in Miami. There's several of them that call the same city home.
Okay, so I was trying to. Los Angeles was the first one that I thought of, but yeah, Georgia State now playing football. They have this decade in Miami with FIU, as you say, and all this. So you could limit it to 127 cities, but let's just use them as Atlanta than there is, let's say, in Johnson City, Tennessee. But at the same time, I can make the argument that Johnson City, which is a top 100 market in terms of TV, and it's an FCS town, but, okay, this is a college town. Or Chattanooga, the big league team in town for Chattanooga, not a dinky poo place. I mean, it's a top 100 market given to FCS cities, like, say, the two that I just named.
I would an entire FCS department at Hero Sports. So I kind of let those experts handle the FCS, and I kind of stick with the FBS. But yeah, maybe there is something down the line where we can combine the two and create a master list of the best college football towns, period. And I think you would find kind of what you named several schools, some of the greatest campuses, greatest programs in college in general.
Yeah, and you look at this, I mean, where town against, say, Seattle, it's very difficult to, when you're trying to make those determinations. Look, I once tried to rank all the SEC stadiums, and for Saturday Down South, okay, Wai Sallas. I've been to 3 of them. I've been to Knoxville, I've been to Columbia, and I've been to Gainesville. And so to try and rank the other, and I'm here like saying, well, I'm putting Vanderbilt ahead of Alabama and at Ole Miss or LSU. That's what I'm sort of reduced to. Wait a minute. Knoxville. I mean, the people around here, I'll just put it this way. I was thinking about this driving in, how once I was in Knoxville the day of the Knoxville, Georgia football game, stop off at a store for gas, and in line with me is just put in your mind what a Southern Belle would look like, okay? They play Rocky Top over the radio station that's, being piped. And she turns to me and says, do they play that song here all the time? And I say to her, well, as a matter of fact, they do. And so, with that in mind, how is Knoxville behind Boise, Idaho?
That is a fantastic question. And to tell you the truth, and I'll be honest, looking back at the list, I wish I had put, when I look at the difference, if we're looking at Knoxville, which football program has done better, and that's Boise, but which football program has better competition, and winning ball games, the mood and the environment can lag a little bit.
Okay, I see that.
And if you're visiting a town, you don't want that. You want the best experience possible, and a winning program, you're going to get a better experience than a losing program.
So if this was 10 years ago at Miami, they were losing their last game at the Orange Bowl 48-0 to Virginia. So because of the competitiveness of the team, that would help the ranking of the college football city, is what you're saying.
Well, I would take it a step further and say if it was 20 years ago and we're in the mid 90s, Knoxville would probably be in the top 5.
Okay, sure.
Because that program was one of the best in college football at that time. Doing 11, 10-win seasons every year. Who wouldn't want to be in that environment with the Ball Navy, with the beautiful surroundings, with that crowd and how amped they would be for every game? That would be a place I would have in the top 5, no doubt, if it was the mid-90s with the program they were having.
And so also, I would just point out here, Nebraska then, Lincoln would be down in these rankings, I suppose, because they were 5-7 last year. My old home of Pittsburgh would be down. But if it was, say, the Jackie Sherrill era of the Pitt Panthers, then Pittsburgh might be a top 20 college town, is what you're telling me. Is that the case?
Absolutely. And the same thing goes for, Alabama and Tuscaloosa. If we're talking the Shula days, they're going to be a lot lower than the Saban days, because who wouldn't want to go see a national championship contender every week? So this is a list that varies based on the program success, but it also varies on the city's upgrades and the city in general is.
And I think that there might be something to that, because, like I said, I do remember, I'm old enough to remember when, Dan Marino played at Pitt, and there was a far greater sense of awareness, and that this is a program that should win and has history than there are now after the Panthers last year were 5-7, for instance. And so I can kind of see that. Still, though, I'll also ask you this, though. There are certain towns that, well, they're the college and that's it. And I've often wondered if that is Knoxville. I do think Knoxville is big enough that there are things outside of the University of Tennessee there. There's more than 100,000 people there, for crying out loud. A place like, which is 30,000 people, and all they have is Penn State, basically. You take Penn State away from it, it's a small town in Pennsylvania without any charm. And that's also, by the way, one of the reasons why I've often felt that when the Sandusky scandal came out, they weren't punished harder, because if you had given, say, Penn State the death penalty, then you were destroying tons of restaurants, tons of motels. That's who you were hurting. Whereas SMU, who cares if SMU in Dallas plays or doesn't? That sort of thing. Dallas can withstand the departure of SMU football. It's no big deal to the economy. It is the state college. With that in mind, does a smaller town, does State College, does Starkville have an advantage in your rankings above big cities?
Well, it depends on not only the city itself, but the city offerings, but the program as well, or the college in general. Like Starkville is really low on my list, because there is and you talk to anybody in Starkville, a place like State College, or a better example, Blacksburg, where you're in the middle of nowhere, and the only thing is that college team or that college town, but their program is so good and so traditionally respected that it becomes part of the lore of the city, and it becomes a destination because of that program. That'll vault it in the rankings.
But let me ask this then. Blacksburg, I mean, that's the closest, the second closest real major, not including Boone as major. I mean, I realize Sunbelt you could, but, say top 5 conference.
Right.
Blacksburg is the other team. You saw the Battle of Bristol 2 years ago. That's where we are, all right? So my question is this. Blacksburg also, it's 30 miles away from Roanoke, which is a fairly large city with, entities and all that. Again, it's not Chicago, but, it's people know stores and, people wear shoes and all that good stuff in Roanoke. And so I'm asking, isn't Blacksburg really Roanoke, much the same way maybe that you would say Tempe is Phoenix?
I mean, I'm sure, you could make that kind of leap, so to speak. But I think if you talk to anybody from Blacksburg, the last thing they would say is they're Roanoke adjacent.
Real? Okay.
While if you talk to people in Tempe, I think that's just. I think there's a level of pride in Blacksburg with the people that I've spoken to who've gone to school there, where they are in Blacksburg. They're not in Roanoke. They don't consider themselves a part of Roanoke for whatever reason, whether it's because of that Virginia Tech pride or the city pride or what have you. I think when you have and you can probably dot that across the country where there's towns where they're close to cities, but because of the university atmosphere and the boosters and the alumni support, that they can have a neighboring city because there's so much pride in that particular town.
Okay, all right. It's kind of curious.
Have a different experience.
No, and it's kind of curious. And right off the top of my head, I don't know exactly how far Tempe is from Phoenix. I'll tell you the truth. Like I said, I've made the Blacksburg to Roanoke trip. It's 30 miles. It's not that long.
Right.
But so I consider it, kind of more of the metro area. I mean, my goodness, it's 25 miles from Johnson City to Bristol, and we're the Tri-Cities. So, that sort of thing. I got to ask you real fast. You got Knoxville's 26. Where do you have Blacksburg then?
I have Blacksburg at 20.
Oh, well, now this is controversial, certainly. But that's basically because the team is winning. Okay. Where is Boone, North Carolina then? Because that also, is very close to us. Where's Boone?
Boone, North Carolina, I have at 16.
Hokey smoke, Bullwinkle. And now I'll just go into it because I'm the only guy that thinks that this is really part.
Let me look. Winston-Salem was 94.
All right. No, I get that. Nobody thinks of Wake Forest, even though, anyway, Winston-Salem. Who do you got number one? Can you reveal that now?
Oh, I can't reveal that yet. We've got a ways to go. I will say this. There are several teams from the SEC in the top 10.
Okay.
When I say several, there's three teams in the top 11.
All right, 3 in top 11. The thing is, there are a lot of SEC fans that are absolutely insistent that Vanderbilt is the 14th best college football program in America. I've seen those guys. And it's something.
14th in the nation, or
I'm telling you that I have been around, and these guys drive me up the wall. But I can remember once, being around, just talking to people, and a guy insistent that a 5-7 Tennessee team was better than an undefeated Southern California team because, after all, Tennessee plays in the SEC. There is a mentality in the SEC, and I know it's a little bit, I may be saying this a wee bit tongue-in-cheek. There is that mentality in the SEC. It's maybe not universal, but it does exist. Trust me on that.
Well, I think they've SEC to some extent, maybe not to that extent, but to some extent they've earned it. I think they've played for a national championship in like 12 of the last 13 years or something ridiculous like that. So I think they've earned that. But I think we can all agree, for those people maybe not in the SEC but outside of the SEC country, that there's a top tier and a lower tier in the SEC. And the top tier is what kind of strings along the rest of the SEC.
Well, Wai Sallas of HeroSports.com, which, by the way, if you are also an ETSU fan or an Appalachian State fan, this site covers all the D1 teams. I was very impressed with their FCS coverage. Maybe didn't agree with everything they wrote, but I was impressed. Also, we'll have to have you on the next time to talk about what is this? I saw your fair and Am I a little concerned that their teams are going to get $10 million more from their TV contract than the SEC teams? And could that have a factor in the future? Absolutely. Did I say the ACC 2 years ago was the best conference in college football because they were 10-4 against the ACC and had the national champ? Absolutely. But fourth best? Really? I'm going to have to ask you about that next time. Okay, Wai Sallas?
Sounds great.
Seriously, the stuff. If you're looking for something optimistic about ETSU this year, I found it on that site. So, Tri-City Sports Now coming back after